I love that addition of also having the parents screened too, because
It's
a lot of parents,
genetic, baby. It's
yeah, it's very,
genetic.
I went to a family reunion a couple of years ago and I was like, oh, oh, I see. Welcome to Hacking Your ADHD. I'm your host, William Kerb, and I have ADHD. On this podcast, I dig into the tools, tactics, and best practices to help you work with your ADHD brain. Hey team, this week I'm joined again by Cynthia Hammer, founder of ADD Resources, the Inattentive ADHD Coalition, and most recently, FINDtheADHDgirls. Cynthia's been a driving force in ADHD advocacy since the 90s and continues to be one of the loudest and clearest voices calling for easier, more accurate diagnosis, especially for girls. In our chat today, we talk about how inattentive ADHD often slips through the cracks, especially in school settings, and how often many of us end up masking so well that even our parents and teachers miss the signs. And since inattentive ADHD is such a predominantly seen thing in women, this is another one of those things that have caused so many women to go undiagnosed. Additionally, in our conversation, Cynthia walks us through the new ADHD screening checklist she developed, the importance of identifying co-occurring conditions, and how things like sleep, histamine intolerance, and even stretchy joints can intersect with ADHD in ways that aren't always obvious and don't always connect. If you'd like to follow along on the show notes page, you can find that at hackingYourADHD.com/224. All right, keep on listening to find out how we can work on finding those ADHD girls. Have you back on the podcast? Last time we talked about your book, The Living with Inattentive ADHD, Climbing the Circular Staircase of Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. Always, whenever I like expand ADHD out into its full name, I'm like, wow, that is a really long name to say all at once. But anyways, it's great to have you back on the podcast.
Well, actually, I was thinking the other day, I reread an article I wrote about how it's a terrible name for our condition. And I was just saying how why couldn't we make up a name? We could just call it ADHD and never say what it means. It could just be called ADHD and we never say what it means.
I mean, that works for me. It's so
Yeah.
nice and short. We know exactly what we're talking about.
Or who's it? Dave Pilkey calls it ADHD.
Oh yeah, yeah. My
That
kids
would
definitely
work
enjoyed
too.
those Dogman books. Um, but yeah. And speaking
Well,
of the
I'll
kids,
catch you up on what I've been doing since we last talked.
okay, yeah. Do you want to do that now?
Yeah, that'd be fine if
Yeah,
your
let's go with it.
listeners don't mind.
Yeah.
So my book came out and I had thought it would sell millions, and now I'm happy it's selling thousands. And also I had it made into an audiobook, so that's available if people prefer that. And I guess as a special incentive for people to come to the website we created now for Find the ADHD Girls, they can look under resources, and I have a link there that they could get that audiobook for free.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. I know I personally do a lot of books for audiobook because I can go out on a walk and
Oh,
I also
yeah,
tend to speed them up because
I've heard that.
I know some people don't like doing that, and for me, I'm just like, oh, I focus better when it's a little bit faster. I can't try and get other thoughts in between the words.
Right. Well, so even though I read that I should keep promoting my book, of course, with ADD, my interest has moved on. And after I interviewed 25 women that had combined typed ADD, I realize it's not only the inattentive type that goes undiagnosed. Maybe that's true with men and women, but with women, they get misdiagnosed whether they have the inattentive type or the combined type. So we started a new project under the Inattentive ADHD Coalition, and it's called Find the ADHD Girls. And our mission there is to get girls diagnosed before age 8. Boys with ADHD are diagnosed on average by age 7. And
Mhm.
when we talk to clinicians, they say they're comfortable diagnosing children by age 7. So we want girls to get diagnosed by age 8.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it seems it seems like it's the lag time between uh knowing that women are underdiagnosed and getting the action for it happening has been taking longer than we'd expected. So I love this project because it is something that needs to happen because I have met many of my daughter's classmates and I went, oh, I maybe I should have a little talk with your parents because you should know, you should keep an eye out for some of these things.
Yeah, well, and if you're thinking that now we're saying it's 10 to 11% of children have ADHD, and if half of those should be girls, it means in a class of 30, let's see, you'd have three children that should have ADHD, and half of those, one or two of them, should be girls.
Yeah.
At least we think that it's an equal opportunity diagnosis. So we think, we don't have the research, but we think boys and girls have it in equal amounts, although boys have been diagnosed 3 times more often than the girls. So there's a big backlog there of women now that never got diagnosed, and we don't want that to continue to happen. We want them to get diagnosed early the same way other children are getting diagnosed early.
Yeah. And the advantages of having that early diagnosis are so clear because everyone, most of the people on this that listen to this podcast are late diagnosed, but do
Right.
have, I know we have a lot of parents and caregivers and stuff as well that are listening, but it's everyone that I've talked to that's had this late diagnosis. It's just, they're like, I wish I had known because there's so much negative self-talk that goes along with not having that diagnosis and just thinking you're not as good as everyone else.
Right. And but the part two, I mean, a lot of it is tied into the inattentive ADHD, which is more common in girls, is because the public has such a concept of the hyperactive, physically hyperactive child that until we educate about the inattentive type, it's still harder. I mean, even parents who got one child diagnosed and didn't get the other because they didn't know about the two types. It's just it's a lack of knowledge. It's not a lack of will. It's not, people would be willing to diagnose, but they lack the information.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it is such a thing where most of our knowledge from about what ADHD is comes from pop culture, which I mean, inattentive ADHD is not. I can think of a few characters that I would qualify as having inattentive ADHD, but never like explicitly said to have ADHD.
Well, I
Be-
don't think we're not as exciting or as dynamic. I actually had tried to find Dave Pilkey's address, and I sent him a letter on Bainbridge Island saying how he could do a favor to the ADHD world if he created a female character who had the inattentive type. But I was trying to figure out how could she be a good character in a book? What would she be doing? She'd be having maybe visions or dreams or
yeah,
create, I don't know. Can you create a good character that's inattentive?
I feel like you could because you could definitely have all the very classic inattentive things, like staring out the window, losing your stuff all the time. It's like having the character be like, oh, you know, they always show up, but they always have the wrong stuff with them because they forgot what they were supposed to bring.
But then they do something magical or amazing in
Yeah.
spite of your low expectations.
Yeah, well, I mean, that is something that I feel a lot of us we're like, yeah, I brought the wrong stuff, but I still figured it out because I had to do it so often. I know what to do when I'm out of sorts.
Well, I love what someone said. They think our creativity is partially based on the fact that we forget how we did it the last time. So we have to figure out a new way to do it.
Yeah, never the same way twice.
Yes.
Um, so I'm really interested. So what is uh the method that you're using to try and drive this
Okay. So first, I created a checklist, and it's based on the DSM-5 and the DIVA-5, which are validated things. But I asked AI to simplify the language. So it's in a much more digestible, understandable. I always found the DSM criteria difficult
Yes.
to fathom. So this breaks it down and describes actual behaviors. And then we had three psychologists, including Kathleen Nadeau, and two physicians who only treat ADHD, give us more input. And they added sections to cover anxiety and depression and
Mm.
emotional regulation. And the whole questionnaire is based on the kinds of things that would be seen in a 7-year-old girl. So we encourage people to go to the website. It's just findtheadhdgirls.org and fill out the checklist. It's a screening tool. It's not diagnostic, but it's a screening tool. And if your child has a lot of check marks, you should take the form, completed form to your physician and talk with him about your concerns. The other thing we've done with the website is we have a lot of articles growing weekly. We add more articles talking about the different aspects of helping a young girl who's just been diagnosed with ADHD. And beyond that, we have interviews. They're on our YouTube channel. Catherine Ellison, who's a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, she has ADHD, but she's doing our interviews for us. And we're interviewing professionals, finding out what they advise for these young girls, and also parents, what they've done to help their young girls. Beyond that, we have a program, it's by invitation only, but we are inviting women of influence in the ADHD field to become committed partners. And by becoming a committed partner, they've agreed every quarter they're going to do something to share this kind of information about ADHD in young girls with their followers. And in turn, they're asking their followers to share that information and them to share that information. So it's like a chain letter that we're trying to disperse throughout the social media world, this information about young girls needing to get diagnosed early.
Yeah. I mean, and that's such a important factor to like, yeah, people don't know what they don't know. And so getting these kind of checklists where they can find this information out. Um, and are there
Actually,
some
I could give you the PDF it's all in the public domain. Everything we're going to produce will be in the public domain.
oh, that's very cool.
And so I can give you the PDF and you can, if you have a place where your listeners could go find that. We prefer they come to the website and fill out the form online because it's actually research based. And we
Mhm.
already have 300 responses that help us to know which issues are the most predominant ones. We find out that a lot of girls, the parents are saying they also bite their fingernails. Now that's something
Mhm.
we wouldn't have known. So if they filled out the form on our website, they would automatically be subscribed to our newsletter and they would be helping us with our research because the online form collects all the data.
Yeah, I mean that's great too to be able to like find those patterns that we normally wouldn't see. Because ADHD very rarely just comes is the only thing that you're dealing with. So
Yes,
it's
right.
very important to see like, okay, well, what else are we do we need to watch out for? Because maybe um, it's uh, one of those things where yeah, if I know this one thing, I can find this next thing, and then it's I mean, and as a parent, I know how much I want to be able to support my kids in the best way that I can. And to
Hmm.
do that, I need to know what's going on.
Ah, yeah. So the other thing that we're learning, and I personally have this experience of I had allergies and I went through allergy shots, and then I learned I have histamine intolerance. And now I'm learning that people with ADD are often deficient in the DAO enzyme, which is what breaks down your histamine when you eat foods that are high in histamine. We're learning a lot more about some of the physical problems that are more likely to be had in people with ADHD. Have you talked with anyone about that?
I have not. It's on my list because I really want to get
Oh,
into like the hypermobility aspects that I've been learning
yes.
about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Especially 'cause they affect me, and uh, so always
Well,
have the I
there's
have
a
I've dislocated my shoulder so many times now,
mm,
just from doing things where I'm not like be going into extreme range of motions or something, and it's just like pop, and I'm like that's not good. And
I think that's you might look it up, and I'm not sure I have the name right, but I think it's called the
uh,
Ehlers-Danlos
uh,
symptom, or
yeah,
it's loose joints,
Ehlers-Danlos, yeah.
loose joints. And
Hmm.
I always thought I was something special that I could reach behind my back and reach way up to the back of my neck, that I had very flexible shoulder, But I apparently, if it's bad enough, it causes people harm and injuries
Yeah.
like you experienced.
Yeah, one of my wife's best friends has Ehlers-Danlos, and they like will dislocate their fingers in their sleep, which is
Ah,
very
oh,
unpleasant.
wow.
Um,
Well, but the histamine I think is an issue for people with ADD, and it might contribute to their sleep problems
mhm.
because if I eat some foods high in histamine, it's harder for me to sleep or harder me to get into deep sleep.
Yeah, yeah, definitely the that kind of things like, and then we already have so many issues with sleep on top of that from
Yes.
with our how the changes in our circadian rhythm and all that. It's we don't
Oh,
need to be adding on more things, and I know for me personally, my symptoms are so much worse when I have bad sleep. And when
oh
my
yes.
kids have bad sleep,
Yes.
their symptoms are so much worse. It's
Yeah. Well, one thing I wanted to go back and talk about Find the ADHD Girls is what we're creating a lot of content. Every month we create two handouts, and they'll be available so that professionals could download those, put their own label on it, and distribute it. Because I know sometimes parents say, I go to the doctor and they just give pills, they don't give us any information. Well, we're creating the handouts that doctors or therapists could use to give to their patients. They'll be a part of our website. We're creating it now called the repository. And all the things that we create, all the content we create will be in the public domain. And it's all things people could download and share, use however they want, put it in a newsletter, um, whatever. So I wanted to get that information out there.
yeah, it's yeah, having those resources available is very important because it's again, we learn mostly through pop culture, which we know is wrong, and then but having easy access to resources that are accurate and giving you the information you need is so important now.
Right. So do you have any children that are girls with ADHD?
I do.
Oh, and
Uh,
and what age were they diagnosed?
she was probably she was under 7.
Ah,
I think maybe when she was 6.
was it
Um,
before or after your diagnosis?
After my diagnosis.
And so that put you on the alert, or how did it come about that she got diagnosed?
Well, yeah, I was on alert because I was already running this podcast. I knew girls were underdiagnosed, and so it was something that I was watching for specifically. And when we talked with like some of her teachers, they're like, "Oh, that's just how kids are and stuff." And I was like, maybe at school because she's very good at being she very very academically gifted, and so is very good at school. Really wants to please teachers and stuff, and so um
They weren't seeing it.
yeah, and so but that was then leading because she was being so uh active at school with trying to be the best student. It was like the crash coming home when left, and it's just like okay, we so looking at that, and then especially like during the summer, seeing how she and it's also been great getting the diagnosis early for her and being able to like educate her about ADHD because she doesn't view it as like a bad thing in any way right now. She's just like, oh yeah, my brain works differently. I have to do these things.
Right,
Um,
right.
and it's also like super helpful as a parent to just be like, oh, there's certain things I can't ask of you because developmentally isn't someplace you're at right now. Like if I'm
Mm-hmm.
sending kids up to their room to get something, I really have to make sure that I know that they're going to have so much trouble getting that thing and coming back downstairs without getting distracted in the middle because
Mm-hmm.
that
You
is something that's
understand.
just so
Yes,
hard to do
yes.
when you're, a little kid and you have ADHD.
Right, right. So, did you have trouble getting the physician to accept the diagnosis when the school was saying they didn't see the problem?
Well, we had them fill out like we got all the
Uh,
forms and stuff,
yeah.
and so they filled it. They're like, "Yep, these are how they display at school." And the physician's like, "Yeah, that's enough." We had a great
Uh,
uh, uh, what's the kid doctor called?
Pediatrician.
Pediatrician. We had a fantastic pediatrician that was on board with everything, and
It's
was
that's good because I've also had a woman write me. She said, "My daughter masks so well." And I think when your daughter's all into pleasing adults, that's a kind of masking,
mhm,
that they're afraid to let people know where they're struggling. She said she masks so well that no one sees her troubles. And so that's an issue that makes it harder sometimes to diagnose the girls because they're masking and it's a stress on them to mask, but it
yeah,
makes it harder for people to observe their symptoms.
yeah. What was really hard is we tried to um can't remember IEP or 504, one of them,
Uh-huh.
dealing with the school and trying to um, you know, take off some of these burdens of masking for our daughter and be like, oh, can she have help with these certain things and these kind of things? And in the school's vision, they're like, no, the masking is a great thing. They should keep doing that.
Huh.
And I'm
Oh,
like, I understand you don't want to put things into place so that you don't have to, but like masking is not the answer for helping people with ADHD.
right, right. Yeah. So that it's good that you know that. And I just think that early understanding of for you to understand, for parents to understand, and from the girl herself to understand. And that's when we're saying is that the the neuroplasticity is there when they're young too. So that if you can raise them learning these new skills and practicing these new behaviors, it's an easier time in their life to incorporate that new learning. When you're an adult, it's harder. Your brain doesn't want to learn new things as easily.
Yeah, I'm recalling a study I probably didn't read it as in depth as I should have now that I'm thinking about it, but it did have suggestions that um, medication for children can really have that effect where it like lowers their need for medication later in life
Uh-huh.
because of that neuroplasticity and them like being able to build
Change
up.
their brain. I
Yeah,
mean, there was a scary thing that came out at a time. It's saying that Ritalin changes your brain. And that made people apprehensive. But I was saying, yes, yes, that's what you want it to do. You want it to change some of the pathways in your brain. So things that were more difficult for you are now easier for you to do because you've strengthened the connections.
yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. Executive function is a skill.
Right,
And if to learn that skill, we need to be able to concentrate, and medication can make that easier to learn that skill and build
right.
up that like internal logic that supports it.
That's our philosophy. We For the Inattentive ADHD Coalition and the Find the ADHD Girls, we believe that medication is the most effective treatment for ADHD. We believe that when one person in a family is diagnosed, everyone in the family should be screened.
Yeah.
And we believe, of course, in early diagnosis and treatment.
Yeah. I love that addition of also having the parents screened too, because
It's
a lot of parents,
genetic, baby. It's
yeah, it's very,
genetic.
I went to a family reunion a couple of years ago, and I was like, oh, oh, I see. Uh,
Well, that happens, I think, when you are first diagnosed, that you go around and seeing it everywhere. And I had family members that would roll their eyes when I'd say so and so has ADHD, and then I'd have to say what their telltale signs were that I could diagnose them with ADHD.
yeah. Yeah, it was also I had a bunch of, since I'd been running the podcast for a while too. I had a bunch of the other parents come by and be like, "Hey, so heard you know a lot about ADHD. Can you give me some resources for my kids?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I know some great podcasts, and um, I mean, you can listen to mine. Not focused on kids, but
So people were recognizing you not because of your behaviors, but because they had heard
yeah,
you're famous.
yeah. It's in family famous.
Oh, I see. Well, and I don't know if this applies as much to children with ADHD as autism, but someone tongue in cheek wrote, I don't know why diagnosis is such a complicated process because my classmates can identify me in 15 minutes.
Yeah, like that is yeah, and they don't identify it as ADHD or autism, but they do identify that kid.
Yes, right, right. And so that's with the girls, that's where they really struggle is with the social connections, I think more than the boys, because the boys' behavior is more acceptable and boys
Hmm.
will be boys kind of thing. But girls, there's just certain ways we're expected to act, certain social skills we're expected naturally to inculcate. And when we don't, we feel different and we're outliers. We don't know why. And so getting the understanding why and finding others who who are like you. I mean, that is a key thing, I think, is always finding your tribe.
Yeah.
The people where you don't feel like you have to mask, you can be who you are. I went to the first conference for adults with ADHD, and it was such a joyful experience
Hmm.
because we could openly say and laugh about our stories of having lost our way back to our room or losing the keys or, the typical things that we try to mask when we're around
Yeah.
people that don't or judge ADHD. So that's what the ADHD conference often is for that release of tension.
Yeah. It's a nice little reprieve of like, oh yeah, no one is going to judge any of my ADHD conditions here.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Um, so I would love to jump back on this idea that you were just talking about how girls don't always they're not presenting the same, and they're having uh some of these more unique challenges. Do you think you could speak a little bit more on some of the unique challenges girls face in the school system, or just women in general face with ADHD?
Well, what Dr. Owen Mason said at first is that teachers at the start of the year, they'll kind of identify the children in the classroom that might need help. Now, maybe this is true for the combined type, but what generally happens is children with ADD look really good at the start of the school year because things are new and interesting. And it's not till a little bit later that maybe the girl that's not turning in her homework, who forgets to do the back side of the paper, who is disorganized, she's asking a fellow student, what page are we on? She doesn't know the place. If she's called on, she's not sure what the teacher just said. It's a instead of one or two predominant things, like with the boy, he's physically active, he's disruptive, he's talking out in class, very in your face kind of symptoms. The girl, it's more subtle. And the teacher has to be alert that it's not just one behavior that's a telltale, it's this complex of behaviors. And that's where the checklist helps because it makes you aware of the variety of behaviors, but when they're all pulled together, it's a high indicator of the ADHD in girls. Now, for the girls that have the combined type, they often suppress their physical hyperactivity or they try to express it in more socially acceptable ways. So they would tell me that I would find ways to get out of my seat that were not obtrusive. Do you know, it's not like the teacher would say, "You're out of your seat, go sit down again." They would get up to sharpen the pencil, or they would raise their hand and have to go out of the classroom to go to the bathroom, or they would be trying to be teacher's helper where they could get up and pass things around the classroom. So they intuitively knew they were restless and they needed to be active, but they were trying to learn to do it in waves again, where they were masking that they wanted to do it in really socially acceptable ways. One woman told me that to suppress herself, she was biting the inside of her cheek,
Mm.
causing herself a little bit of pain to remind herself, stay in your seat, keep quiet, hold yourself in. So girls, I think, put themselves under more stress for meeting socially accepted standards than the boys would.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that. Where like I was like going back to my own childhood and going like, oh, I did a bunch of that stuff. Like I remember going to
Oh, yeah. So
um
you're an inattentive type. So you had suffered some of the same
yeah,
things that the girls do.
yeah. Well,
Mhm.
so I'm combined type, but I did do like the
Yes, yes,
uh like I need to go to the bathroom and I would go to the bathroom, but then I'd walk up and down the hall for a bit and move around a bunch and then come back. Uh
yes.
I hadn't thought about that in a long time and it was like, oh yeah, I totally did a bunch of this stuff where
Well,
at the time
and
I didn't know
so
why I was doing it, but like in retrospect, like, oh, that is very obvious why.
when I asked Dr. Ferrone which form of ADHD the people suffered the more, he said the combined type because they had more symptoms. But I feel like the inattentive type suffers a lot because of their internal talk. I think they're not, they're more shy, they're more anxious, they're more withdrawn, whereas the combined type, they're more out there. Maybe they get rejection, but they're more flamboyant, I would think, in their personalities. You get this feeling that things they shed. They're less aware, or I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how it is for them, so maybe I shouldn't speak to that, but I know how it is for me.
Yeah, well, and I think there's, advantages, disadvantages. Like, yes, you get the for the more hyperactive, impulsive sides of things, yes, you get more reprimands, but you are doing more stuff. With the inattentive type, you're getting a lot less support because people aren't seeing your internal struggle. They're not
Yes.
seeing that, like, they're just like, oh yeah, she's just not doing the things because I think the inattentive type gets a lot more of the they're lazy or they're not reaching their potential. Um, and
Hmm.
the impulsive is like, oh, they just need to redirect their energy and they need to do something. They're both not great, but it is something where it's really easy to overlook what's going on with the inattentive type and kind of dismiss it because they're not causing the big problems in the classroom. They're not making a scene.
Yeah, and maybe there's a couple other simpler ways to start finding the children with ADHD. As Dr. Hallowell says, underachievement that doesn't reflect the aptitude. The child that you think should be doing much better than they are, but they have the underachievement, that can also be an indicator of ADHD. Or in England, this guy said that they're going to try to start teaching teachers about the bell curve and to recognize the children that are on the end of the bell curve, the ones that are, just in different measurements, they're not in the middle with everyone else. And that could be a way too to start saying these children are off the bell curve. They're not paying attention like other children in the class. They're not having the friendships like other children in the class, different measures that would make you think they're developing normally.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where looking back on my childhood, being like, seeing like, okay, those were the weird kids, and being like, oh no, that was just, they were being themselves. And the reason that we kind of like, I don't know where I'm going with this exactly anymore. Lost
Well,
my train
and
of thought.
well, the other day, this woman said to me that our society has one way you're supposed to be. And if you're not that way, they say you have a disability.
Hmm.
So I
And
thought that was really good. You have the in crowd and the out crowd.
yeah, definitely. And it's the one of the things I feel like I've learned from doing this podcast is that if you're struggling with something or someone else is struggling with something, there is a reason behind it. It is not just they are bad or
Right,
you are bad. It is there is there's some underlying thing that is causing the struggle. And if we can identify what that struggle is, it makes so much easier to get past the struggle because you're like, oh, I can do things specifically for this now. I don't just have to try harder or just give up because I don't know what's going on.
right, right. Yeah. So I guess that's not a new way of thinking, but just thinking that no child wants to misbehave. There's a reason behind the misbehavior,
Oh yeah,
and that's
absolutely.
what you should be looking for.
Yeah. Trying to like, as I said, like my daughter really likes to please people, and I'm like, when she's not doing that and she's struggling with getting something done, there is a reason behind it. And if I try and identify that, then I'm going to have like maybe she got really bad sleep, or she's dealing with these histamine issues, or
Hmm.
something
Hmm.
along this line, and being like, okay, if I can address what's going on, she doesn't want to be, you know, going nuts at, a
Yeah, she doesn't want to be making me upset.
yeah. Like, I mean, I think there are times that she definitely wants to be making her brother upset, but that's sibling stuff. That's different. But for parents and like, yeah, the kids are so desperate for approval and wanting to please, and
Hmm.
when they're misbehaving, it's like, okay, there's something else going on here. Let's try and figure out this.
Hmm.
Why, if I can approach this with like, oh, what's going on here? Like being overly critical and judgmental won't help solve this problem. I have to be a
Hmm.
collaborator with my kid to figure out how to get things to get it so both that their needs are being met and whatever I want is being met as well.
So how old is your daughter now?
She will be 10 next month.
Huh. Uh-huh.
Um, and her brother will be 8 this year. So
Hmm.
got, um, yeah, he was, it is very funny because it was, for diagnosis, I was like, oh yeah, it's like for me, it was very obvious that my daughter had ADHD. Um, but it was the combined type but leaning more towards the inattentive. My son was definitely on the leaning towards hyperactive impulsive. So it was just so much more obvious from
Hmm.
the outside. And I'm like, this is the exact reason that more
Ah.
boys get diagnosed than girls, because it was like,
Mm.
oh yeah, she has ADHD. And then my son came along and was like, holy guacamole, that's that's ADHD.
Yeah, it's like two different settings on the dial. They both could have what's called the combined type. They both have the same type, but it depends what predominates. And so one psychiatrist said that after reading my book, he didn't think I had the inattentive type. And I disagreed. I said, to me, it's more how I come across. If I meet someone who's what I think of as combined type, they're high energy. They are full of, they can do without a little sleep. They have lots of ideas. I say, I can be that way for a short period of time, but I could not maintain it all day long. But I think of the hyperactive impulsive, even though maybe we're both combined. I'm more towards the inattentive characteristics.
Yeah. And I think there's also like this difference when we're older, and even though I might appear more inattentive now, I do have a lot more restless thoughts. Like I'm impulsively doing things, like instead of like impulsively like running in out into the street or something, I'm like maybe doing impulsive shopping, or opening 15 YouTube videos when I should be doing something else. Or and I'm
Uh-huh.
like, oh, these are all impulsive things, but they're not, because they're not high energy impulsive things, they don't feel like they're impulsive things.
Ah, that's true. So sometimes when I'm supposed to be doing something and I'm going down a rabbit hole instead, I just tell myself that I know I'm doing this and I'm going to get back to what I'm supposed to be doing when I'm done doing this. So I give
Yeah.
myself to follow that impulse because I'm saying to myself, if I don't do it now, I'm going to forget and I really need to know about this. So I give myself permission to go off track.
Yeah. I mean, because that's, I think, a great strategy, because I know so often when I am feeling distracted, trying to force myself to just like, no, just buckle down, do what you're supposed to do. I'm like, that doesn't usually work. That's just me being like, I want to look at, and sometimes all I need to do is like make myself a note, like, hey, look up this idea that you had, like, who was the actor in that movie? And it's like, okay,
Well, that works and it doesn't because I write a note and I think, well, I'll understand that when I look at it. And later I look at it and I have no idea what the note was about.
yeah, I try to
Or
make those notes
because
as,
I have poor handwriting, I'll try to do something with a code and I'll create a code and say, well, I'll remember that code means this person was on LinkedIn. But I,
yeah, yeah. It's always fun finding those. Like, I'm like, what was this sticky note about?
yeah,
Or I just
who
have like a
wrote
phone
it?
number on it, and I'm like, why did I just write down a phone number and like stick this to my monitor 6 months ago?
I have some names I've written down, and now I'm doing Google searches on them to find out, hopefully, why I had written their name down.
Yeah, it's always funny to find those. All right, well, we're coming up on time, so I was wondering if there were any final thoughts that you wanted to leave the audience with.
Well, I guess if any of you out there are concerned about giving girls with ADHD a fair start in life, there's some simple things you can do to help spread our message. If we're out on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram, if you started to follow our posts, if you commented on them, if you reposted it, that is going to increase our audience size because the more popular our posts are, the more the algorithm thinks, oh, other people will want to see this, so they share it. And the other thing is, if, as I said, we're creating a lot of content that's in the public domain. So if you're putting out a newsletter, if you are putting out anything on the internet that you need content for, come check us out because we're happy to share what we've created. And I think it's very good. It's um, reliable, well-researched information that we provide. And
Awesome.
so, what I think William's gonna leave. We're gonna be able to make the checklist available for you. And remember, you can go to the website and you can get my audiobook for free. That's a little inside tip there.
All right, I'll include links to all of that. And so the website is findtheadhdgirls.org, right?
Yes.
And what social media platforms should people look for you on?
Well, we're on LinkedIn, we're on YouTube, we're on Instagram and Facebook.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure, I hope I can send a lot of people your way, because I think this is a great thing, because it's so important for everyone to get diagnosed early, and especially right now with girls who are just not getting that same attention.
Yep. Thank you, William. Thank you
Yeah,
for your help with this.
thank you. Thanks again to Cynthia for coming on the show, and thank you for sticking with us all the way to the end. Be sure to go check out findtheadhdgirls.org. Before you go, let's do a quick rundown of today's top tips. 1. Not all hyperactivity is easy to spot. When dealing with combined type, many suppress hyperactivity and find subtle, socially acceptable ways to move around. like volunteering to hand out papers or making frequent trips to sharpen pencils or get something from the office, as a form of masked hyperactivity. 2. Masking can often lead to delayed or misdiagnosis, especially for those who are people pleasers or academically high-performing. When a child seems fine at school but crashes emotionally at home, that's a sign that they may be overcompensating and masking symptoms all day. 3. Early intervention can help build long-term executive function. Treating ADHD early isn't just about managing symptoms in the moment, it's about teaching skills like organization, regulation, and focus while the brain is at its most plastic and ready to learn. Alright, that's it. Thanks for listening. I'd love to hear what you thought of this episode. Feel free to connect with me over at hackingYourADHD.com/contact, or you can find me on Blue Sky at hackingYourADHD. If you'd like links or to read this episode's transcript, you can go to the show notes page at hackingYourADHD.com/224. If you'd like even more Hacking Your ADHD, be sure to sign up for my newsletter, Any and All Distractions, which comes out every other week. In it, I give out my best distractions of the week, be they what I'm reading, what I'm playing, what I'm watching, or anything else that might be distracting me. I also try to give out a few bits of actionable advice in each newsletter, although your mileage is going to vary there. If that sounds like something you might be interested in, head on over to hackingYourADHD.com/newsletter to sign up. I also wanted to let you know about our Patreon that you can easily find at hackingYourADHD.com/Patreon. It's going with a pay-what-you-want model, meaning that all levels of Patreon will receive all the same stuff. You can pay $0 or $2 or $10, and it's all the same. The only real difference coming from the roles that are assigned on the Hacking Your ADHD Discord. Which reminds me, I also wanted to announce that we're going to be on Discord, which you can get access through from the Patreon, which again is pay what you want. So, if either of those sound like something you're interested in, just go to hackingYourADHD.com/Patreon to sign up. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, which you can find at youtube.com/@hackingYourADHD. And finally, if you'd like to support the show, the best way to do so is to tell someone about the show, especially if you think a particular episode would resonate with them. Just click the share button on your podcast player. And now for your moment of dad. What do you call a fish without an eye?